He thought he could destroy me after we broke up, but he had no idea what I was capable of. Ethan Parker was always confident, always believing he was smarter than everyone else. When we ended things, I thought the hardest part was losing him. I was wrong. The real fight began the moment he started attacking my life, my finances, and my reputation. At first, I didn't even notice what he was doing. Small things seemed normal, like a delayed payment here or a missed call from a client there. But soon, I realized he had frozen some of my accounts and was whispering lies about me to people at work. People I had trusted, people I had counted on for support, were starting to look at me differently. I felt the walls closing in, the betrayal cutting deeper than I could have imagined. This wasn't just a breakup. It felt like someone had ripped the floor from under me while laughing. I spent nights staring at my bank statements, wondering how someone I had shared so much with could turn on me so completely. I remembered the promises he made, the words he said about always being there, about supporting each other through everything. And now, here he was trying to take everything away. The pain was suffocating, but it didn't break me. I could feel anger bubbling under the surface, and with it, something stronger, determination. I had a choice. I could let him win, sit back, and watch my life crumble, or I could fight. I decided right then that he would not see me defeated. I started planning quietly. I began reviewing my accounts, checking every detail, and making sure I understood exactly what he could and could not touch. I spoke to people I trusted, discreetly, and gathered information about the small mistakes Ethan was making in his own life. It became clear that his arrogance was his weakness, and if I stayed calm, I could turn this situation around. Even on the days when I wanted to cry, I reminded myself that I was stronger than this betrayal. Ethan's actions showed me the person he truly was, not the man I thought I loved. And knowing that truth gave me power. My heart ached, but my mind was sharp. I began to see a path forward, one that didn't involve confrontation or shouting, but careful steps, quiet strategy, and reclaiming control over what was mine. I wouldn't let him win. Not with my finances, not with my reputation, and certainly not with my peace of mind. The shock of betrayal had been painful, but it had also awakened something in me. I was done being someone's victim. And this was only the beginning. After the initial shock of Ethan's betrayal, I knew I had to take control. I couldn't rely on anyone else to fix what he was trying to destroy. So, I started rebuilding my life quietly, focusing on what I could control. I took on extra hours at work, carefully managing every project, making sure my clients and colleagues had no reason to doubt me. I kept my head down, but inside, my mind was running constantly, planning the steps I needed to take to protect myself. During those long nights, I remembered something Ethan never knew about, an inheritance my grandmother had left me. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough to give me a strong foundation. For years, I had kept it hidden, knowing it was my safety net for emergencies. Now, it became my secret weapon. He thought I was struggling, that I had nowhere to turn. He didn't know I had resources he could never touch, money that was mine no matter what he tried to do. I began quietly transferring the inheritance into secure accounts, making sure it was untouchable. I didn't flaunt it, didn't announce it to anyone because that would ruin the advantage it gave me. Every step I took was careful, deliberate. I learned to watch and wait, letting Ethan believe he was winning while I strengthened my position behind the scenes. Ethan, of course, had no idea. He assumed I was desperate, panicking over the frozen accounts and the lies he had spread. I could almost picture him celebrating privately, thinking he had ruined me. That overconfidence was exactly what I needed. While he gloated in his mind, I was quietly gathering strength, making sure that every decision I made put me further ahead. The anger I felt fueled me, not in a reckless way, but as motivation. Every time I thought about how he had tried to destroy me, I reminded myself that I had the chance to turn this around completely. I wasn't just defending myself. I was planning to come back stronger, to show that betrayal and cruelty couldn't break me. As I worked late into the night, reviewing numbers, making calls, and quietly securing my finances, I realized something important. This wasn't just about money. It was about reclaiming control of my life. Ethan's actions had lit a fire inside me, and instead of letting it consume me, I used it to build a plan. Each careful step, each decision to protect myself was a small victory. By the time Ethan thought he had me cornered, I was already miles ahead. My quiet determination and the secret my grandmother had left me gave me the upper hand he never saw coming. I wasn't struggling, I was preparing. And soon, he would learn that underestimating me had been his biggest mistake. After securing my finances, I realized the next step wasn't rushing into action. It was watching. Ethan's arrogance had always been his biggest weakness, and now it became my focus. I started paying attention to his habits, his business moves, and the way he treated the people around him. It was shocking how confident he was, believing that nothing could touch him. That confidence made him careless, and I knew that carelessness could be used against him. I noticed small things first. He trusted people who didn't deserve it, signed deals without reading the fine print, and bragged about his plans in ways that revealed his mistakes. Every misstep was like a clue, a thread I could follow to see how far he would go and where he would stumble. I didn't need to confront him or try to sabotage him directly. The more I watched, the more I realized he was setting himself up to fail. Ethan's personal life showed the same pattern. He was overconfident with friends, dismissive of advice, and careless with money. People started questioning his decisions, and I made mental notes of each incident. His arrogance was blinding him, and it made him predictable. For the first time, I felt calm. The rage I had carried since the breakup was still there, but it was quieter now, replaced by a sense of strategic patience. I could wait, and I would wait, letting him make the mistakes he couldn't see coming. I also began documenting everything mentally. Every error, every trust misplaced, every sign of overconfidence. These would all be pieces of the puzzle I could use later. It wasn't about revenge in the dramatic sense. It was about letting his own flaws bring the consequences. I reminded myself daily that patience was more powerful than anger, and that rushing could ruin everything I had quietly built. As the days passed, I could see the pattern clearly. Ethan had a habit of underestimating people, thinking he was always ahead. That made him predictable. I stayed low, maintaining my focus on my life and work, while quietly observing him. I didn't speak to him or try to interfere in his plans. I simply watched, letting my patience grow and my strategy form. The calm I felt was different from relief. It was control. For the first time since the breakup, I felt like I had the upper hand without even acting. Ethan was blind to his mistakes, and that blindness was my advantage. I knew I could wait, and when the time came, his own choices would create the downfall he never saw coming. By staying quiet and observant, I replaced the chaos of my anger with a clear plan. Each day I watched him, I grew stronger emotionally. The betrayal still stung, but it no longer controlled me. Now, patience and strategy guided every thought, and I knew that his downfall wouldn't be caused by me directly. It would be caused by his own arrogance. After spending time observing Ethan, I realized it was time to strengthen myself even more. I focused on my finances first. I quietly consolidated my accounts, moved my inheritance into safe investments, and made sure everything was protected. I didn't want to leave anything to chance. Each decision I made was careful, deliberate, and aimed at giving me control over my life. At the same time, I knew money alone wasn't enough. I needed to improve myself, my skills, and my confidence. I began taking courses related to my career, reading books on strategy and personal growth, and practicing patience and focus every day. I wanted to be untouchable not just financially, but mentally and emotionally as well. I started seeing results slowly, but they gave me a sense of power and security I hadn't felt in a long time. It was during this time that I met Lucas Bennett, a financial advisor and mentor. Lucas was patient and insightful. He taught me how to manage money wisely, invest strategically, and plan for the future. More importantly, he guided me on building resilience. He showed me that strength didn't always come from fighting back directly. It often came from preparation, strategy, and knowing your own worth. Working with him gave me confidence and reminded me that I wasn't helpless. Meanwhile, Ethan continued with his small sabotage attempts. He froze minor accounts, spread rumors, and tried to make people doubt me. But by now, his actions no longer scared me. I had prepared for this. I had fortified my finances, strengthened my skills, and built a network of support. Every time he tried to push me down, I stood taller, knowing he was underestimating me completely. The more I built my strength, the more I realized how much control I had over my own life. For so long, I had felt vulnerable, letting Ethan's actions and words affect me. Now I felt grounded. Each step I took, whether investing money, improving my skills, or learning from Lucas, added to my confidence. I could see clearly that I was no longer the person who had felt powerless after the breakup. Ethan, on the other hand, still thought he had the upper hand. He didn't notice that I was growing stronger, smarter, and more resilient every day. His arrogance blinded him to the truth. The woman he tried to destroy was now unstoppable, and he didn't even realize it. By the end of this period, I felt a deep sense of self-respect. I was no longer living in fear of what he might do next. Instead, I was living intentionally, building a life that no one could ruin. My confidence wasn't loud or flashy, but it was steady and unshakable. Ethan's underestimation of me would soon become his greatest mistake, and I was ready for the moment when he would finally see just how strong I had become. With my finances secure and my confidence growing, I knew it was time to take the first real step. I didn't need to confront Ethan directly. I had learned that the most powerful moves were quiet and calculated. I started paying attention to the business deals he was involved in, noting every weakness, every overconfidence, every careless decision he made. I began subtly influencing situations around him. When he made deals or trusted people blindly, I quietly ensured that the right information reached the right people. Enough for them to notice his mistakes without ever knowing I was involved. It wasn't about revenge that anyone could see. It was about letting his own arrogance and carelessness create the consequences he deserved. One example was a small partnership he was excited about. Ethan had boasted about it constantly, claiming it would double his income. I quietly shared observations and warnings with one of the partners, phrased as general advice. Soon, cracks appeared in the partnership, and others began to question Ethan's judgment. I never had to step into the spotlight. I simply let the seeds I planted grow on their own. Another time, I noticed he was overspending on a project without proper planning. Instead of confronting him, I provided subtle suggestions to a key investor involved, making them reconsider the deal. Within weeks, the investor pulled back, leaving Ethan frustrated and confused. It was satisfying, not because I wanted to hurt him, but because it proved that his arrogance couldn't protect him from the results of his own choices. I watched quietly as the first signs of his struggles became visible to those around him. People started talking, noticing that Ethan was making errors and bad judgments. I didn't need to announce anything. The control I felt came from seeing him falter, while I remained calm and collected. For the first time since the breakup, I felt the taste of justice, subtle, precise, and entirely in my favor. This approach wasn't about anger anymore. It was about strategy, patience, and letting his own flaws take center stage. I didn't gloat, I didn't call him out. I simply let my actions, quiet and invisible, begin to shift the balance. It felt empowering to realize that I could influence events without putting myself at risk or creating drama. Each small success strengthened my confidence. I was no longer reacting emotionally, I was acting intentionally. Ethan's overconfidence was creating its own consequences, and I was in the perfect position to let those consequences unfold. The first move had been made, and it had worked. For the first time, I could feel real control over my life again. It wasn't loud or flashy, but it was mine. I realized that this was just the beginning, that I could continue to reclaim everything he tried to take from me without ever facing him directly. The quiet power I now held was intoxicating, and I knew I could use it carefully to ensure he never underestimated me again. As I continued observing Ethan, I started hearing small hints from mutual friends and colleagues. At first, I didn't want to believe it, but the pieces fit together too clearly. Ethan hadn't just tried to ruin me, he had betrayed other people too. He had lied, taken advantage of their trust, and made decisions that protected himself financially at their expense. It was shocking to see how far he would go to serve his own interests. I felt a mix of anger and sadness. These were people I had trusted alongside him, people I thought were part of my world. The betrayal cut deep. But instead of letting it destroy me, I decided to use it strategically. I knew that exposing these lies had to be done carefully. My goal wasn't to humiliate him loudly. It was to let the truth quietly reach those he had wronged, so that the consequences naturally followed. I started with subtle conversations. I didn't confront anyone with accusations or drama. Instead, I shared facts and observations in ways that allowed friends and colleagues to realize the truth on their own. I reminded them of small inconsistencies and actions they may have overlooked. Gradually, they began to see the patterns. Ethan had lied, manipulated, and put his own gain above loyalty and trust. It was satisfying in a quiet way to watch him begin to lose credibility among people he thought he could count on. He still had no idea that I was behind the careful exposure. It wasn't about revenge for the sake of revenge. It was about setting the record straight and making sure the consequences of his choices reached him fully. The isolation that followed wasn't forced by me. It came from his own behavior and arrogance. At the same time, I felt a sense of empowerment growing inside me. Every time someone realized the truth, I reminded myself that I had stayed calm and strategic while he had acted recklessly. This wasn't chaos, it was deliberate, and it worked. I was no longer the person crushed by his actions. I was now someone who could respond thoughtfully, even in the face of deep betrayal. Watching him slowly lose the support of people around him also gave me clarity. I realized that betrayal wasn't just about money or power. It was about trust, loyalty, and the small ways people rely on one another. Ethan had destroyed that trust, not just with me, but with everyone who mattered to him. That revelation was painful, but it also reinforced why I had to stay strong, independent, and in control. By the end of this phase, I understood something crucial. True strength comes from patience, awareness, and careful action. I didn't need to confront Ethan directly or make scenes. I had turned the betrayal into an opportunity to empower myself, to rebuild relationships with honesty, and to quietly ensure that he felt the consequences of his choices. The emotional sting was still there, but it was no longer a weakness. It had become a tool, guiding me toward the life and control I deserved. Over time, the changes in Ethan's world became impossible to ignore. His careless decisions and betrayals had started catching up with him, while I quietly built a life that was secure and growing stronger every day. I could see it in the way people spoke to him differently, the doubts creeping into his business relationships, and the frustration building behind his confident mask. For the first time, he realized that I wasn't struggling like he had hoped. I was thriving. I stayed calm through it all. There was no rush, no need to confront him or make a scene. I watched as his frustration grew, small cracks appearing in the confident persona he had always worn. He tried to regain control, but every move he made only highlighted his mistakes and arrogance. Meanwhile, I continued living my life, working, investing, and strengthening myself. Nothing I did was dramatic, yet everything I had built quietly showed him that he had underestimated me. It was a strange kind of satisfaction to witness. I didn't need to brag or intervene. The consequences of his own choices were unfolding naturally. His panic became obvious to those around him, and it was painful to watch, not because I enjoyed his suffering, but because it was proof that my careful patience and strategy were working. He had acted recklessly, and now he was facing the results without realizing I had prepared for this moment all along. People around us began noticing the difference. Colleagues and acquaintances who had doubted me before now respected my resilience and skill. Ethan tried to assert himself, but his mistakes and bad decisions overshadowed his efforts. I saw him struggle to explain failed deals and broken trust, while I moved forward with confidence and clarity. His arrogance, which had once seemed untouchable, was now the very thing that exposed him. Emotionally, I felt a shift inside me. The initial anger and hurt from the betrayal were no longer the driving force. Instead, I felt a quiet sense of power and control. Satisfaction came not from revenge or humiliation, but from seeing the truth play out exactly as it should. His downfall wasn't created by me. It was created by his own poor choices, overconfidence, and carelessness. And yet, I had positioned myself perfectly to benefit from the natural consequences of his actions. This turning point marked a major shift in my life. I no longer feared him or his attempts to sabotage me. I had reclaimed control over my finances, my reputation, and my peace of mind. Watching him falter while I thrived reinforced a lesson I had learned the hard way. Patience, strategy, and self-respect are far more powerful than anger or confrontation. By letting Ethan's arrogance lead to his own difficulties, I realized I didn't need to do anything dramatic to prove my strength. The quiet observation, careful planning, and resilience I had cultivated were more than enough. He had underestimated me from the start, and now, the consequences of that mistake were undeniable. I didn't celebrate. I simply continued moving forward, knowing the truth was clear, and justice had quietly taken its course. By now, my life had returned to a sense of balance, but it was stronger than ever. I had fully reclaimed control over my finances, my career, and my personal life. The inheritance I had secured, combined with careful investments and disciplined planning, made my finances untouchable. I no longer worried about sabotage or setbacks because I had built a foundation that no one, not even Ethan, could shake. My career began to flourish in ways I hadn't imagined. Projects I had taken on with focus and dedication started showing results. Clients and colleagues respected my work, and I gained recognition for my skill and professionalism. The confidence I had cultivated over months of careful planning now translated into tangible success. I could feel the weight of the betrayal lift from my shoulders, replaced by a sense of achievement and self-respect. Looking back, I realized that Ethan's attempts to ruin me had almost worked. Not because I was weak, but because I had initially allowed his actions to affect me emotionally. But that pain had also sparked a transformation. Each setback forced me to think strategically, to prepare carefully, and to grow stronger. The betrayal that could have destroyed me instead became the catalyst for my resilience. It taught me how to protect myself, how to make smart decisions, and how to value my own worth above anyone else's opinion or interference. Meanwhile, Ethan began facing the consequences of his actions. His social and professional circles started noticing his mistakes, and word of his poor judgment spread. Deals he had once celebrated collapsed, and people who had trusted him questioned his integrity. He had assumed I was vulnerable, that he could control or harm me, but he was wrong. The embarrassment and frustration he now experienced were entirely of his own making. He had underestimated me, and that mistake was becoming painfully clear to him. What struck me most was the contrast between our situations. I had built a life rooted in patience, discipline, and careful planning, while he was struggling because of his arrogance and short-sightedness. True power, I realized, didn't come from lashing out, from dramatic revenge, or from trying to humiliate someone. True power came from resilience, from quietly taking control of your life, and from letting the natural consequences of someone else's actions unfold while you remained steady and strong. At the end of this chapter, I felt complete. I had not only survived betrayal, but had turned it into an opportunity for growth. Every financial decision, every step to improve myself, and every moment of patience had led me here. Ethan's attempts to break me had failed entirely. I was not only unbroken, I was stronger, wiser, and in full control of my life. I understood that my strength didn't need to be proven to him. It was evident in the life I had built, in the respect I had earned, and in the peace I now felt. Reclaiming my life had been the ultimate victory, and it was far more powerful than any act of revenge could have ever been. By the time I had rebuilt my life completely, I realized something important. I didn't need to confront Ethan. Every attempt he had made to harm me had failed on its own. He was facing the consequences of his own arrogance and poor choices, and there was no need for me to intervene or prove anything. Letting him deal with his mistakes without my interference felt freeing. The control I had gained wasn't about drama or revenge. It was about living my life on my own terms. I began reconnecting with the people who had truly mattered throughout this ordeal. Family and friends who had supported me during the hardest moments became a source of strength and comfort. I spent time with them, sharing laughter, stories, and quiet moments of understanding. Their belief in me reminded me that life wasn't just about what Ethan had tried to take. It was about the people who genuinely cared and the relationships I had fought to preserve. Emotional closure came gradually. I reflected on the betrayal, the pain, and the anger I had felt when Ethan tried to ruin me. Those feelings were natural, but I no longer let them control me. I understood that holding on to resentment or a desire to humiliate him would have only pulled me back into his world. Instead, I focused on my peace, my growth, and my accomplishments. That perspective brought a sense of calm I hadn't felt since before the breakup. As I spent more time with supportive people, I noticed how different life felt. I laughed more freely, made decisions with clarity, and enjoyed achievements without needing validation. I realized that true satisfaction didn't come from seeing Ethan fail. It came from knowing that I had survived, thrived, and remained true to myself. The quiet joy of reclaiming my life, without drama or confrontation, was far more powerful than any revenge could have been. I also understood that closure wasn't about erasing the past. It was about accepting what had happened, learning from it, and moving forward without being held back. Ethan's betrayal had hurt deeply, but I had used it to build resilience, independence, and self-respect. Leaving him to face the consequences of his own actions allowed me to step fully into my own life, unburdened by anger or the need for recognition. In the end, I didn't need to say anything to him. I didn't need to watch him suffer or explain myself. I had already won in the most important way. I had taken back my life, my confidence, and my peace of mind. Walking away quietly, focusing on what truly mattered, and surrounding myself with love and support gave me a sense of satisfaction that revenge never could. The lesson was clear. Letting go of the need to gloat or retaliate is far more rewarding than any act of vengeance. By choosing calm, patience, and emotional closure, I reclaimed not just my life, but my happiness. And that, more than anything, was the victory I had been seeking. Looking back on everything, I realized how deeply betrayal by someone you love can hurt. Ethan wasn't just an ex, he was someone I trusted, someone I had shared my life with. The pain of his actions cut deeper than anything I had experienced before. But in the end, that pain became the fuel for my transformation. It pushed me to think clearly, act strategically, and protect what was mine. The most powerful lesson I learned was that reclaiming yourself is the ultimate form of revenge. I didn't need to yell, argue, or confront Ethan. I didn't need to show him my life or boast about my success. Every step I took quietly, every decision I made to strengthen myself, every strategy one implemented to protect my finances and career became part of my comeback. The satisfaction didn't come from hurting him. It came from proving to myself that I could rise above the betrayal and thrive. He had tried to ruin me, thinking I was vulnerable and unprepared. But he never knew about the inheritance I had quietly secured, the careful planning I had done, and the resilience I had built over months of patience and strategy. That secret, the one he never imagined, became the foundation of my comeback. It reminded me that true power isn't about confrontation or drama. It's about preparation, wisdom, and self-respect. Reflecting on this journey, I see now that my growth wasn't just about finances or career success. It was about self-worth. It was about knowing my value, understanding my strength, and refusing to let someone else define my life. Each challenge, each act of betrayal, became an opportunity to sharpen my judgment, to learn, and to grow stronger emotionally and mentally. I also realized the importance of strategy and patience. I didn't rush into actions driven by anger. I observed, I waited, and I let natural consequences unfold. By doing so, I didn't just protect myself. I allowed the truth to surface, letting Ethan's mistakes speak for themselves. That quiet strength was far more effective than any dramatic confrontation could have been. Now my life feels complete. I am financially secure, emotionally stable, and surrounded by people who genuinely support me. The lessons I've learned about trust, resilience, and self-reliance are more valuable than any material success. Betrayal had tried to break me, but it ended up shaping me into a stronger, wiser, and more confident person. For anyone reading this, remember this. Betrayal hurts the most when it comes from someone you love, but rising above it, protecting yourself, and quietly reclaiming your life is the greatest victory. I didn't need revenge in the traditional sense. My comeback, built on strategy, patience, and self-respect, was my proof that no one could take away my strength. He tried to ruin me, but the secret he never knew became the foundation of my comeback. And in the end, that foundation made me unstoppable, resilient, and fully in control of my life. A lesson in quiet strength that no betrayal could ever undo.